Stalking is chilling enough, but when it turns into murder, the obsession becomes truly terrifying. These killers didn't just take lives, they shattered families and communities, leaving devastation in their wake. But one case stands out above the rest: Joshua Stimpson's courtroom meltdown after taking a life he claimed to love. Buckle in, because these stories will leave you questioning everyone around you. Let's begin.
The big story tonight at 5, breaking news in Detroit. Detroit police say a man is in custody at this hour in connection to the kidnapping and murder of Detroit Medical Center nurse Patrice Wilson, who was killed Saturday.
Look at that person lingering around the outside. Hat on, mask over his face, and a long blonde wig. Prosecutors and police say that is 36-year-old Jir Miller.
On a quiet May morning in Detroit, Michigan, nurse Patrice Wilson finished her overnight shift at a local hospital. Unbeknownst to her, lurking in the shadows was Jir Miller, her ex-boyfriend turned stalker. As she stepped into her car, Miller ambushed her, forcing his way into the vehicle at gunpoint. This kidnapping would end in a chilling crime that shook the city to its core.
And it was a man that allegedly would not leave her alone, would not respond to her wishes to leave her alone.
Miller's obsession with Patrice began after their relationship ended. Unable to accept her moving on, he began a campaign of harassment, one that escalated dangerously over time. Authorities later revealed that Miller had a history of violence, including connections to the 2011 disappearance of another girlfriend. Despite his alarming behavior, no one could have predicted the horrifying events that unfolded.
Out his alleged plan to abduct his ex-girlfriend nurse, Patrice Wilson. Miller knows where Wilson works. He knows when she gets off from work.
That fateful morning, Miller abducted Patrice from the hospital parking lot. Surveillance footage captured the terrifying moment, showing her desperate struggle to break free. Tragically, her body was discovered the next day in the trunk of her car, abandoned in a neighborhood miles away. She had been shot in the head, a cold and calculated execution.
Her attacker speeding away, driving her Lincoln SUV. Wilson was later found stuffed in the trunk of that SUV. She had been shot to death.
The case unraveled quickly as detectives traced Miller's movements. Using surveillance footage, witness accounts, and digital evidence, investigators built a damning case. Miller attempted to evade justice, but was arrested just days later. His criminal record, which included multiple offenses, painted a picture of a man with unchecked rage and a dangerous history.
She was simply trying to live her life, work hard, and break off a relationship that she knew was not good for her.
During his trial, prosecutors highlighted Miller's pattern of targeting women who rejected him. Testimony from family members, friends, and even strangers illustrated the fear and devastation he left in his wake. His chilling lack of remorse was on full display as the evidence mounted against him. Miller pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and kidnapping, facing a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was tense as Patrice's family confronted him, their voices trembling with grief and anger. Despite their emotional pleas, Miller remained cold, his expression devoid of remorse. His sentencing marked the end of a dark chapter for Detroit, but left unanswered questions about the justice system's ability to prevent such tragedies.
Livingston says she can't stomach the thought of losing another child.
Back in 2003, I lost a son. He was riding his bike and he was 15 years old and a car hit him.
Community members held vigils, mourning the loss of a vibrant woman whose life was cut short by senseless violence. In the courtroom, Patrice's mother delivered a powerful statement, recounting the devastating moment she learned of her daughter's death.
I can say to you, I don't understand you. What kind of person are you? Where you come from? Who can even support you?
His lack of reaction only deepened the outrage for those present. For Patrice's family, there was no closure, only the bittersweet knowledge that her killer would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Jir Miller's lack of remorse highlighted the terrifying consequences of obsession turned deadly. But the next case centers on Harvey Nichols, a man whose fixation escalated into a brutal crime, leaving a community shaken.
I heard gunshots and just dived for cover. It was horrific.
It all happened so quickly, and the next thing I see is the gun.
On September 13, 2005, the glamorous Harvey Nichols department store became the site of a horrifying crime. Amid bustling shoppers, Michael Petch, a former security guard, approached Claire Bernal, a 22-year-old beauty consultant, with chilling intent. In a matter of seconds, the store transformed from a luxurious haven into a scene of chaos as Michael enacted his devastating plan.
Exclusive Harvey Nichols department store in London tonight. Police said a man and a woman were pronounced dead at the store.
Michael Petch had become obsessed with Claire after a brief relationship. When Claire ended things, his behavior spiraled. He began stalking her relentlessly, sending threatening messages and following her every move. Claire, Terrified, reported him to the authorities. Michael was arrested and charged with harassment, but despite being bailed with strict conditions, he continued to track Claire. On the day of the murder, Michael slipped past Harvey Nichols' security. Armed with a 9mm handgun he had smuggled into the UK from Slovakia, he followed Claire into the beauty hall. Witnesses later recalled seeing him pacing near her counter, his face dark with anger. As Claire chatted with a colleague, Michael pulled out his gun and shot her in the back of the head. She collapsed instantly.
The thing we established was that 4 shots were fired, and then a further one was shot into the ceiling, and then he turned the gun on himself.
Shocker screamed and ducked for cover as Michael fired 3 more shots into Claire before turning the gun on himself. Witnesses described the horror of seeing Claire's lifeless body on the store floor, surrounded by broken glass and the lingering echo of gunshots.
Behind this shocking murder in the most prestigious shopping street in the UK lies a tale of love, obsession, and a very modern phenomenon, stalking.
Michael's obsession had robbed Claire of her future and left her loved one shattered. Despite Claire's reports to the authorities and Michael's bail conditions, he was able to acquire a firearm and evade detection. The failure to protect Claire from a known stalker sparked outrage across the UK, leading to calls for stricter stalking laws and better support for victims.
As they told me what had happened, I knew it was Pesh. I just knew. I said it's Pesh.
Claire's mother, Patricia Bernal, became a vocal advocate for stalking victims, dedicating her life to raising awareness and pushing for legal reforms. She was so full of life, Patricia recalled, her voice breaking. No one should endure what Claire did.
I've learnt about another world that we live in, and I've been cocooned, and I've cocooned my children.
The public outcry following Claire's murder led to the establishment of organizations like Protection Against Stalking. While justice couldn't bring Claire back, her story became a catalyst for change, giving strength to countless stalking victims who feared they had no voice. Our next case takes stalking to a new level. Steve in Duxbury, a man whose actions turned a young woman's worst fears into a terrifying reality.
The suspicious death of a 27-year-old Orlando woman. Sasha Samsudin's body was found Saturday night inside of her apartment at Uptown Place.
In the early hours of October 17, 2015, Sasha Samsudin, a vibrant 27-year-old with a bright future, was found lifeless in her Orlando apartment. Sasha had been enjoying a night out with friends before the unimaginable happened. What started as an ordinary evening turned into a nightmare when Stephen Duxbury, a security guard at her apartment complex, used his position of trust to commit an act of unthinkable violence. Stephen Duxbury, a 33-year-old security guard at the apartment complex, exploited his position to target Sasha. When Sasha, slightly intoxicated, struggled to find her keys to enter her apartment, Duxbury offered to help. What seemed like an act of kindness quickly turned sinister. Surveillance footage captured Sasha entering the complex with Duxbury following closely behind, a chilling image that would later haunt investigators.
As a security guard, he used his access to prey on someone who was very vulnerable.
What happened next unfolded behind closed doors, but the evidence told a story of horror. Duxbury used his master key fob to access Sasha's apartment. There, he launched a brutal attack, strangling her in a desperate attempt to silence her screams. Sasha fought for her life, scratching Duxbury and leaving DNA evidence under her fingernails, a silent testimony to her struggle.
They started gathering evidence inside Sasha Samsudin's neat and tidy apartment after finding her lifeless body in her bed October 17th.
The morning after, Sasha's friends became worried when she didn't respond to calls or texts. Their fears turned into devastation when her lifeless body was discovered inside her apartment, wrapped in a blanket. Investigators quickly zeroed in on Duxbury after uncovering damning evidence: misuse of the key fob, inconsistencies in his alibi, and Sasha's DNA found on his person. The community, once trusting of their security staff, was left in shock and fear.
Death is the result of asphyxiation and a particular type of asphyxiation, manual strangulation.
The trial was harrowing. The prosecution meticulously laid out the evidence, painting a chilling picture of a man who betrayed his position of trust for his twisted desires. Sasha's family and friends filled the courtroom. Their grief was palpable as they relived the horrifying details of her final moments. Duxbury, who showed no remorse, claimed innocence and attempted to shift blame onto others. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for only 5 hours before finding him guilty of first-degree murder, attempted sexual battery, and burglary. He was sentenced to life without parole, ensuring he would never harm another innocent victim again. Sasha's mother stood before the court, her voice trembling but determined, as she described the void left in their lives. Friends recounted Sasha's warmth and ambition, contrasting the bright future she had with the darkness of her end. Duxbury's cold, detached demeanor during these testimonies added another layer of pain for those seeking closure. The case served as a chilling reminder of how predators can hide in plain sight, even under the disguise of protection. The haunting image of Sasha's final moments and her fight for survival left an indelible mark on the community and beyond. But if this betrayal of trust shocked you, the next case takes it even further. Martin Munz, a man who preyed on those closest to him.
I'm serious, I'm not crazy. And you could go to the address and verify. The address is 3719 Mac Court. But I want you to handcuff me first.
It started as an ordinary January evening in 2023 on Cleveland's Mac Court, where a quiet neighborhood turned into a nightmare. 4 family members were brutally shot to death in their own home, and an 8-year-old girl was left critically injured but clinging to life. The attacker? A relative they once trusted, Martin Munz. This massacre wasn't random. It was a calculated eruption of violence that shocked an entire community. Munz's relationship with his family had always been strained. He often clashed with them over perceived slights and unresolved tensions. On January 13, 2023, Martin Munz arrived at the family home with vengeance on his mind. Armed with a handgun, he first turned on his father, shooting him point blank. His sister, her boyfriend, and their mother were next, each gunned down in cold blood.
You name out the people again you said who he said he killed?
It's the sister. Her name is Angelique. The husband, Tone. 2 kids.
As chaos erupted, Munz set his sights on the youngest member of the family, an 8-year-old girl. Though critically injured, she managed to survive the ordeal, becoming the key witness to this unfathomable tragedy. Munz didn't flee immediately. Instead, he walked out of the home with a chilling calm, almost as if nothing had happened. Police apprehended Munz later that evening, just blocks from the scene. During questioning, he displayed no remorse, instead blaming his actions on internal turmoil and long-standing family grievances. Investigators quickly pieced together the sequence of events using forensic evidence, witness statements, and the surviving girl's testimony.
Well, I tried to kill my sister's whole family, but 2 of them got lucky and lived.
Munz's criminal record showed a dark history, including a connection to a 2013 cold case murder in New Jersey. This revelation painted a clearer picture of a man with a violent past, whose rage had now boiled over into a massacre. His own confession sealed his fate, as he admitted to pulling the trigger in a moment of uncontrollable anger. In the court, the details of the crime stunned even seasoned prosecutors. Munz's defense attempted to argue diminished responsibility, claiming mental instability. But the jury was unswayed. The verdict? Guilty on all counts of murder, attempted murder, and multiple related charges. Munz was sentenced to life in prison without parole, a punishment some family members felt was still too lenient for the horrors he inflicted.
The family has now come from all over the world to say goodbye and be here as 8-year-old Iana continues to fight.
Family members of the victims expressed their heartbreak and fury, with one relative calling Munz a monster in disguise. The 8-year-old survivor, now in therapy, faces a lifetime of trauma, haunted by the memories of that night.
The suspect appeared to be almost grinning as the prosecutor mentioned his victims.
Munz, meanwhile, sat stone-faced, his lack of remorse further fueling the anguish of those left behind. Outside the courtroom, neighbors and friends lit candles and held vigils for the slain family, grappling with the reality that such evil had lived among them. This case left an indelible scar in the community, a chilling reminder of how deep betrayal can cut. The next case takes stalking to an entirely different level. Joshua Stimson didn't just take a life. His calculated and obsessive behavior revealed a terrifying predator who stopped at nothing to control his victim.
Josh Stimson became increasingly threatening after Molly broke off their relationship and he turned up at her gym that day.
Molly McLaren was a bright, ambitious 23-year-old with her entire future ahead of her. She loved fitness, was pursuing a degree in health and nutrition, and lit up the lives of everyone around her. But beneath the surface of her happy life was a dark shadow. Joshua Stimson, a man who turned from a charming acquaintance into a relentless stalker. Their encounter on Tinder seemed harmless at first, but it would spiral into a nightmare that ended in unimaginable tragedy. Molly and Joshua began dating in November 2016, but the relationship quickly unraveled. Stimson displayed obsessive, controlling behavior, bombarding her with messages, monitoring her social media, and reacting with anger when things didn't go his way. Molly broke off the relationship in June 2017, but Stimson refused to accept her decision.
He turned very quickly into this very, very nasty, manipulative character. She was upset every day.
His stalking escalated rapidly. He began leaving cryptic posts on Facebook, referencing Molly by name and implying she was promiscuous. He also followed her to public places, including her gym, where CCTV later revealed him watching her every move. Despite Molly's attempts to cut ties and even reporting Stimson to the police, he continued to fixate on her, turning her life into a constant state of fear and anxiety.
When CCTV cameras captured Stimson following Molly up into a gym in the dockside area of Chatham, he was already guilty of stalking her.
On June 29, 2017, Molly decided to work out at the gym in Chatham, Kent, hoping to reclaim a sense of normalcy. Unbeknownst to her, Stimson was waiting for her in the parking lot, having meticulously planned his attack. CCTV captured his chilling behavior as he followed her inside, staying close but keeping his distance, a predator stalking its prey. When Molly left the gym and got into her car, Stimson struck. Armed with a knife he had bought just days earlier, he forced his way into her vehicle and began a vicious attack. Molly fought desperately to escape, but Stimson's rage was unrelenting. By the time emergency services arrived, Molly had succumbed to her injuries. She had been stabbed over 75 times. Stimson was arrested at the scene, bloodied and unrepentant. During his trial, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence that demonstrated his calculated intent, from his stalking behaviors to the purchase of the murder weapon. Stimson's defense argued diminished responsibility, claiming mental instability, but the jury rejected this outright.
Stimson claimed he was suffering from a mental condition, but the jury said it was murder.
In February 2018, Joshua Stimson was found guilty of Molly's murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 26 years. The judge described his actions as a brutal and sustained attack, driven by a need for control and revenge.
To begin with, we were both really strong and there for each other, but now Doug seems to be on his own.
Molly's family and friends shared stories of a vibrant young woman stolen too soon, their grief palpable as they faced the man responsible.
One of the charities involved said it's a disaster waiting to happen.
But it's not waiting to happen, it has happened.
Stimson showed no remorse, his cold demeanor only deepening the pain for those mourning Molly's loss. The tragedy highlighted systemic failures in protecting victims of stalking, sparking widespread calls for change in how authorities handle such cases. Molly's parents have since dedicated their lives to raising awareness about stalking and supporting other families impacted by similar crimes. This case stands as a chilling reminder of how quickly obsession can turn deadly and the devastating consequences for those left behind. The chilling crimes of these stalker killers showed the unimaginable lengths obsession can drive someone to commit. But we're just scratching the surface. The next video on your screen dives even deeper into the darkest minds, exposing shocking crimes and the moments that left the world stunned. Don't look away. Keep watching.